Every career has a breaking point, not just any stumble, but the exact moment when everything you believe about your profession collapses under the weight of something that simply shouldn't exist, or ceases to exist, as in this story. For 26 years, I was the man capable of giving dignity to the final farewell, the redeemer of those who lost their names, the comforter of the wreckage of military loss. My work was never about pomp, but about memories, and above all, about truth. Until the day I had to organize a military ceremony for a soldier who never existed. It sounds absurd, I know. I heard it in the hospital's voice when I received the call. Identification confirmed, official records, medals, ceremony with honors in 2 days, distant family, almost no friends. All of it mechanized as if death were just a form, a bureaucratic step to be completed. The name was David Crane, sent as a hero, but strange, very suspicious. Everything had that forced shine of hastily bought souvenirs. 2 shiny medals, documents organized with lab-like precision, nothing out of place. But that perfection bothered me, like a very straight line drawn on wrinkled paper. I felt, from the start, something was off. I did what I always do before receiving a body. I read the name aloud like a small ritual and closed my eyes, trying to capture its story in my imagination. But with David Crane, nothing came. No sensation, no spark, not even that cloud of pain that always hovers over real stories. It was a cold emptiness. The body arrived late on a grey night. Young, military build, a tired face, but no marks, no tattoos, no cuts, no real signs of military experience. On the chest, immaculate medals, and something in that shine reminded me of collectible pieces never touched by mourning. I felt an unfounded sorrow, an unease of being pushed into a theater with no audience or reason. As I locked the chapel door, I swallowed hard. I felt the cold sweat on my neck. That ceremony, something inside me screamed, was not about someone. It was about an empty space trying to seem dignified. My mind kept pounding. How do you honor someone who never existed? How do you console a fabricated mourning? That doubt would stay with me, like a shadow, until today. The funeral home after hours is a stage for ghosts no one sees. Not spirits, but emotions that linger in the hallways, the memories left on each bench of the chapel. Usually I find relief in well-done rituals, but that night, arranging the details of David Crane's ceremony, everything felt artificial, disconnected, like I was the only guest at a performance staged for no one. I spoke to David's supposed sister on the phone. She showed controlled sadness, but her words were stiff. She stumbled on dates, confused cities, didn't know her brother's blood type. I asked about childhood memories, expecting emotional stories. I received only silences and vague answers. No real portrait of a relationship, just the cold sketch of a lie. I tried to locate the hospital he had been transferred from, St. Francis Veterans Memorial. To my astonishment, no such entity existed in the state. The release form had a digital signature from a doctor, Dr. Richard Hammond, who after a quick search was never registered with the local board. They were names, stamps, all printed recently, smelling of fresh ink, devoid of any past. In the morgue, I examined the body. Young, yes, but with no marks of military life. The nails were clean, the hair cut as if hurriedly prepared for just one photo. The medals were in perfect condition, never polished, with no traces of real field coins. Still, the face was that of someone carrying the secret of emptiness. In one last attempt to make sense of it, I accessed public databases, veterans, the injured, the deceased, the missing. David Crane didn't appear anywhere, not in police records, hospitals, military files, or the city's family archives. Questions swirled. What purpose could someone have for creating such a detailed identity, yet so rootless? Was it a tribute, a fraud, or a trap? The emptiness of the body on the table began to devour me, point by point, turning a case into an impossible mourning to name. The night before the ceremony was a free rein to panic. I opened physical folders, checked shelves, searched all the administrative traces of the case, with nothing but printed files from that same week. The admission form displayed doctors' names that, when called, no one knew. No receptionist, no one from the hospital confirmed the existence of that patient. The address left as the family's residence was actually a hardware store, bankrupt for over 10 years, confirmed by old neighborhood residents on the phone. Family phone. Inactive since 2017, now listed under telemarketing, according to the operator. The funeral services were paid for with a deposit from a corporate account opened weeks before and closed shortly after. Contact email? Deactivated without a trace after 2 sent emails. I returned to the morgue for what I call the final truth. In the inner pocket of the deceased's suit, an old black and white photo, 3 soldiers next to a helicopter deteriorated by time. The central face, presumably David's, was slashed with a razor's diagonal cut. On the back, a dark message: "You never existed." The building began to creak, doors groaning with the summer winds, but every crack seemed like a warning, not an accident. Distant voices, inaudible yet present, tried to say something, always disappearing on the threshold between sleep and wakefulness. I looked into the dead man's eyes and wished I could forget them. I realized I was a loose piece in an empty horror theater, as if someone were testing the limits of human mourning. Gradually, I became certain I was indeed the only living one in that ritual. The day of the ceremony barely began, and the aura of strangeness reached its peak. Over the coffin, the flag seemed heavier, almost reluctant to participate in that ritual. The few people present had dull faces, pale figures devoid of emotion, as if they were both acting and observing at the same time. The military honor guard, young and uncertain, was uncomfortable. Before the ceremony, one of them whispered to me, almost ashamed, "We've never heard of him in the battalion." The bugle played taps, but even the sound seemed wrong, like the soundtrack to a forbidden ritual. One of the supposed family members held the folder of documents with excessive force, hard, motionless eyes, as if guarding an old secret. After the coffin was lowered, the 3 mysterious people vanished without a word of thanks. 5 minutes later, I searched for them and no one knew where they had gone, neither staff nor other mourners. Only the coffin in the earth remained, a signed record, and that searing feeling of witnessing a never-before-seen play, a farewell without a biography, exaltation of nothing. I returned to the morgue to close the paperwork at night, but the folder was gone, leaving only the old photo, now with all the faces scratched out. Worse, a recorded message in the steel drawer: "Memory builds heroes. Forgetfulness. Ghosts." I felt a chill in my gums, unable to move my fingers or speak. I became aware that something or someone wanted that funeral to never have happened, even if only for an audience of shadows. I searched the hospital, inquired about all the wards. There were no staff, no patients, no protocol or record of hospital circulation for David Crane. Nothing on the surgery board, no entry in the electronic records. I jumped through the back window, driven by the need for the last detail, and ended up in what seemed like an old storage room in the basement, stained files, overloaded drawers, and behind a loose cabinet, a locked metal box. I unlocked it with a utility knife, its clasp already rusted. Inside, photos of erased faces and a dossier full of fake identities. Random names, all missing soldiers, with no active records, used and discarded in operations never reported. David Crane was just another scratched face, just another name created for symbolic farewell. The phone rang, unknown number. Ceremonies like this preserve what's left of the honor of those who can't be remembered. But you, organizer, only honored the void. And they hung up, leaving only the echo of that truth in my ear. The light flickered, like ghosts testing the limits of electricity. Ice rose through my chest. With every new funeral I prepare, I hear echoes of that nameless soldier's name, see indistinct faces in the chapel's pews, feel the same physical absence in the room. After that early morning, I could never enter the funeral home without looking twice at every dark corner, fearing I'd be called to a new tribute to nothing. Today, I accept that much of what I do is not just honor memories, but safeguard the emptiness between them. But I wonder, what if memory is an invention? Or worse, an intentional farce? And when everything we do in mourning serves only to fill a bottomless abyss, how do you honor the absence itself? I kept the torn photo with me. Sometimes I look at it in the solitude of the early morning and swear I hear soft steps stopping at the funeral home door, long pauses asking permission to narrate a lament that doesn't exist. Since that funeral, every ceremony seems to carry remnants of a nameless soldier, a heavy shadow whose existence was only real because I had to pretend. And if you know or suspect someone who has been erased from records, who never appears in lists, photos, or memories, don't ignore the void. Sometimes it's all that's left to tell a story, and other times it's just the sign that something dark dwells in forgetfulness. After all, who are we? But the sum of the memories others create or deny about us. If you're still here with me listening to the end of this confession, comment the word ghost and answer me. Have you ever participated in a ritual for someone who deep down you feel never existed?